Welcome back to another episode of Free Kick. I'm your host, Jono, and today I have the wonderful Liam with me. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing just wonderfully. I think wonderful is going to be the word for today's episode, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I don't have any wonderful things to say.
Well, that's just wonderful, isn't it? Look, we are here to talk about the St Kilda Saints, but it's a little strange that we're talking about the Saints because we've promised this reverse ladder order, and the last few days we've gone Carlton, then Hawthorn, then the Saints. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation. We've obviously got all these interviews lined up, and for reasons beyond our control at times, those need to move around. But that means that episodes we'd planned to go out would therefore be happening without an interview at all. So in the interests of making sure that we have an interview for every single episode so that we can get more information, we have to move these episodes around. It's annoying. It hurts my sensibilities to be doing it, but I think it's preferable than no interview at all.
Oh, absolutely. Because I feel like our insights are never anywhere near as good as what we're hearing from the players. And I have to say, I can't wait to hear from B. Jakobsson a little bit later in this episode. But for now, can you give us a little bit of an overview of what the St Kilda season looked like in 2023?
Yeah, absolutely. They were a surprising 6 wins and 4 losses and finished 9th, which definitely exceeded my expectations. And I am a known haver of high expectations for St Kilda, obviously. What they did manage to do was really dominate at home. So they got an incredible comeback win against Collingwood RSEA Park. They also managed to beat the team that would go on to win the premiership in Brisbane at the back end of the season, also at RSEA Park. They were definitely an interesting side in their game style, though. So this is a team that ranked 4th lowest in marks per game. They ranked 4th lowest in disposals per game. They ranked dead last for marks per game. They were a bottom 8 side for tackles per game. And they were also a bottom 6 side for fantasy points per game.
Jeez, that is just not a lot of fantasy points to go around. It's going to make our job today very interesting.
Yeah, but what they did manage to do is really put together some dominant quarters where it didn't require many disposals or tackles. They were able to win clearances. And I think that's in part because there is some genuine talent in the midfield group at St Kilda.
Yeah, and it really showed that they stormed home, really. I think 6 of those wins really came in the last, 7 or 8 games. Like, they really stormed home in a way that made you think, wow, they could really come finals 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. They had, obviously, that great win against Brisbane, and they followed that up with a game that they had to win to give themselves a finals chance against a Carlton side that had been plucky at points last year. They were definitely a surprise kind of storm home team. So as much as I'd want to come on here and say that, the non-fantasy friendly game is indicative of a team that can't win in season 2024, but I'd be lying if I said so because they definitely showed the capacity to beat, more highly rated sides than they were multiple times last year.
Do you want to walk through some of the major ins and outs that we had for the Saints?
Yeah, absolutely. This was not a team that hit the free agency period particularly hard or lost that many players to delisting. So in terms of the major traded players, 2 options that we've kind of talked about in the past, predominantly one last year was Renee Karras, who was playing as a ruck for GWS, and then also defender Paige Trudgeon. And in the draft, it was just 2 draft picks. There was Kira Wiley, who went at pick 10, and then Charlotte Simpson at pick 47 as a father-daughter pick, kind of from the clouds, without even though Charlotte had actually been on the VFLW list at Geelong for a couple of seasons, actually came across to St Kilda. And then for their delisted players, the most notable among them was Erin McKinnon, who'd played 48 games across her career at St Kilda and at GWS. So that was a pretty notable loss, but then almost immediately replaced by Renee Karras.
Yeah, I have to say, Erin McKinnon was in my keeper league, so a little bit sad to see her go. Well, I guess without further ado, we might jump over to hear from Bianca Jakobsson, who had a little bit of a chat with Mel earlier this week. and can give us a bit more insight into what's going on at the Saints. So let's throw to that right now.
Okay, so as part of Free Kicks St Kilda team review, we're very fortunate to be able to interview B. Jakobsson. B, how's it going? How's the return to preseason been this month?
Yeah, it's going well. Thank you. Thanks for having me. As every team sort of says at this time of the year, they're going really well. But we have a lot of belief off the back of what we were able to do last year, which we only just narrowly missed out on finals, which was disappointing. But I feel like we've launched really well into this preseason. Having consistency with our game plan and also our list as well has been really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was at the Victoria Oval for the Collingwood game, and I'm a Freo supporter, and everyone was cluing into the Freo Sydney game to see who got enough margins, whether St Kilda or Sydney went through, and it was so close. Like, that was so intense. Coming off like such a close run into finals and winning 6 of your last 7 games, how's the energy coming in? Is it like a lot of pressure, or is it mostly excitement?
Yeah, it's definitely not pressure. I think we've sort of learnt to embrace pressure. Like, pressure is a privilege, and we want to be playing in those games. We want to be playing in those in finals. And the Carlton game was that in a sense. We knew we had to win to make finals, and we've really embraced that. We've done a lot of work with our club psych on, mindset and getting back to the moment, when your mind can sort of wander with especially those high pressure games. Yeah, no, we carry a lot of belief in what we were able to do last year, and it's kind of rolled over into this preseason. Like I said before, we've had consistency with our playing list and our game style, and has really allowed us to just have belief in what we're doing. And we know what you have to do sort of on the day to beat the good teams, and we got a taste of that last year. So really looking forward to what we can produce this season.
Yeah, as you said, it wasn't a very big trade period for St Kilda. You've had a lot of list consistency coming into this season, but you did bring across defender Paige Trudgeon from Carlton. Have you been training with her, and how's she settled in?
Yes, Trudge has settled in very well. She's just slipped straight into our system. She's been absolutely awesome. She's a rock down there. There's been some really great tools with her and Jessie Wardlaw. At training, she's just a brick wall. She doesn't let anything get past her. But she's such a great young kid. She is so receptive to feedback. She's always asking questions. She just wants to get better. And those are the types of people that you love to play with, so coachable, and just super competitive, and one that you can trust going out into the footy field with.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So we've heard, one of our other co-hosts, Will, has gone on a bit of an Instagram dig, and he saw Nikki Stevens put something up about maybe getting more time in the backline this season. Is that something it's going ahead? Has she been training in the backline?
Well, firstly, Nikki Stevens. I don't think she'll like that. Nick Stevens. But,
my bad. Sorry.
Might have to roll with Nikki. No, that's quite funny. No, so she played in the back line the last 2 games, I think it was, of last year. And she's an All-Australian defender. Like, she, the year that she had at Collingwood, All-Australian BNF there. So she's really experienced, and she's had many games under her belt. So she offers a lot of experience back there. So yeah, you may see her in the back line, but she's such a phenomenal player. She's super competitive, and one of those players that you can sort of play everywhere, and a great utility for us. So really looking forward to how Stevie's season unfolds.
Nice. Moving off the back line, or kind of half staying there, someone that we saw play a little bit off half back last season was the skipper Hannah Priest. From some of the games that I was watching in person, at least one at RSEA, it kind of looked like she was doing a bit more of a coaching role from that position, kind of guiding the play a bit. Is that a similar tactic that we might see from her again this season?
Yeah, potentially. Again, similar to Nick Stevens, she can play multiple roles. Obviously, having jumped into the midfield last year, she's traditionally always played as a back, so it's nothing new for her, and not sort of a new change up for her. So yeah, you'll definitely sort of see her in that position at times. But yeah, again, one of those that can sort of play multiple roles, and obviously with her leadership skills behind the footy, hugely valuable for us, just with the communicating and directing. But yeah.
In the midfield, St Kilda have a lot of experienced players. We've got Lambert and Patrikios, who've been there for a little while. But we also saw a massive breakout from T. Smith as she played her second season last season. That was
Mm.
absolutely phenomenal. Have you spent much time with her? What's she looking forward to this season? Another breakout?
Oh, another breakout. Absolutely. She'll definitely be one to watch. Yes, I just sit back behind the footy at training in absolute awe of what she can do, her and Liv through there. We haven't ever really, obviously T's been injured before with her ACL, but we haven't ever really had a solid sort of midfield group playing consistently together that haven't sort of, been injured or for various reasons. So yeah, T is just such a powerful athlete. She's so speedy. She's so strong. Her ball use has really improved this year. I was just saying to her today at training, an inside 50 kick when she's moving at speed is a really difficult kick to do, but our forwards would absolutely love when they see T bursting out of the stoppage, delivering the footy to them. So she has just worked incredibly hard since her ACL, and it's just a testament to her work ethic. And it's no surprise that she's reaping the rewards now. You put in the work and you'll reap the rewards. So yeah, super pumped for T this season.
Yep, me too. And you mentioned that you've got some younger players coming through as well. You've just recruited 2 rookie midfielders in Charlotte Simpson and Kira Wiley. How are they looking to slot into the rotation?
Yeah, look, they've been really good. They, again, with our midfield, like I spoke about before, T, Liv, Chop, Doc, and then our wings, they're going to learn a lot from them. And they've slotted in great, their personalities. They just want to learn and absorb as much as they can. And yeah, they're finding their feet obviously in the midfield there, but Charlotte Simpson's just communicating, using her voice, just trying to learn and absorb as much as she can. And then Kira, again, she's super strong, powerful, got good drive through the footy. So they'll only be better for the run this preseason, running with the likes of, as I said before, Doc, Chop, Liv and T. So yeah, they're going really well.
Right. And Hannah Stewart had to miss most of season 8 due to an ACL injury fairly early in the season. We're just wondering, how's she going fitness-wise? Is she someone that we might see again this season? And would she be slotting back into a kind of season 7 role, rotating through the midfield?
Yeah, Han's tracking extremely well. She's full training now. She's looking super fit. We had our Bronco testing again sort of mid-season the other day, and she absolutely smashed it. Just blew it out of the park, which is phenomenal considering what she's been through with her ACL. But she hasn't really missed a beat, to be honest, with her rehab. She's looked strong throughout the whole process and been a real driving force still with her leadership and communication stuff off the field when she couldn't be training. But yeah, as I said, now she's sort of back in seamlessly. She's super fast, and all her strengths are on show again already. So yeah, you'll probably see her in that forward mid role again, and she's a real asset for us. Her burst speed from stoppage and contest is really strong.
Awesome, love it. In the rucks, so we saw Jessie Wardlaw in there a little bit last season, as well as Simone Nolder. You brought in, though, this off-season, the young ruck from Freo Fiedler, but who we didn't see play last season, and Renee Karras from GWS. That's kind of quite a few ruck options you've got there. Do we know who's going to be kind of the main predominant starting ruck, or is it going to be shared between the lot?
Yeah, we're not too sure what the team will look like at the moment, and whether there'll be predominant ruckman or whether we're running with 2. But what it does offer us is flexibility with our tools, and we know that tools are really hard to come by in AFLW. And having Reen and Em now in at training has made it really competitive for our other rucks in Sim, and then you throw Jessie in there as well. Yeah, it's really competitive, and they're learning a lot from our tools. We have Doones down there as one of the coaches that are helping out with our tools as well. So I'm not sure what that will look, but again, it gives us massive flexibility for tools across the field, which is really hard to come by.
Awesome. And our last question that we like to ask all of our interviewees is, who is the most exciting watch this preseason? Who's someone that's going to make a big impact and at the start of the season and, yeah, have a good year?
Yeah, it's a great question. There'd be so many I could reel off, but I'll go with Liv Vesely. She's had her own challenges across the years with various injuries, but she's got herself and her body into a really strong position, and she hasn't missed a beat this preseason, and her work rate is just absolutely phenomenal. I'm mind blown with what she's able to do at training and with her body. So yeah, I think Liv will have a really great year. Sitting back watching from behind the ball, sometimes the things that she's able to do is phenomenal. So really looking forward to Liv, and it's just great that she's got some consistency with her body. That's what she hasn't been able to have over the last few years. So I think you'll see a really, really strong season from Liv this year. I'm pumped for her.
Awesome. It sounds like there's so many things to be excited about with St Kilda. As you said at the start, like just having consistency in the team coming to this season and excitement from the last season. So really can't wait to see what St Kilda can do.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, wasn't that just a wonderful, wonderful interview, Liam? I was really happy hearing from B there.
She had some great little tidbits, surprising for a team that, to be honest, I was not expecting to be massively fantasy relevant in 2024.
Yeah, some defender options popping up out of nowhere, and a couple with forward status. So I guess that's going to be interesting to go through. I suppose the first thing we need to do, though, is jump into our top 5 most relevant fantasy players. And can you start us off with number 1?
I absolutely can, and it's someone that we all started with if we were playing last year, and that's Tiana Smith. It was mentioned by Bianca as someone that is absolutely training the house down. So why are you picking her as your most fantasy relevant option is a question you might ask me, and that's a good question because Tiana Smith probably isn't going to get a better midfield role per se than last year. She played predominantly as an inside midfielder, and I think that's because it's her most natural position. I don't know if she has many alternatives. She's also someone that, managed to show from a very, very early age in her first ever season that she was capable of averaging above 70 and has a really great tackling game. But she was already averaging over 7 tackles a game, which is already a pretty high number in the context of the AFLW. I think this is a case of betting on natural progression to some degree. It's not often that you get under 22s who are capable of averaging 7 tackles in their first ever season, then miss multiple seasons with an ACL injury, come back in, and barely look like they've lost a step at all. Outside of her first game against North, where she put up a 29, she was a very consistent scorer last year, albeit without a massive ceiling. But if you take out that 29, she goes from a 74 average to nearly an 80. I think it's just like 79.4 or 79.5 or something. So that's a good start. And I think it's very much a case of if she's looking like she's training incredibly, we know she's exceptionally talented. I think in future seasons, this is someone that we will talk about as a premium midfielder. And I'm just saying up front that given I don't know much about some uber scorers in St Kilda, you may as well bet on the one that I think is the most talented fantasy player.
Yeah, no, it actually sounds like a pretty interesting option because, I mean, who else is scoring that high at the Saints? And every premium that we're looking at really bases their game around tackles. There's a couple out there, maybe Ash Riddell, who does it on disposals alone, but tackling is such an important part of putting up these massive scores. So I really do like this option.
Can I just say one more thing? And I think that she's super fantasy relevant, but on a kind of philosophical level, I typically prefer to avoid betting on pure progression, this player's had a new season, they're just going to get better. What I will say, though, is that she sits very firmly in the category of player, which is if you see a breakout in the first couple of rounds, she could be this year's like plus 20, plus 30 young midfielder. She could be this year's Keely Sharaf, for example, who goes from a 70s player or a talented youngster up to a 90s averaging midfielder. And it's really going to hinge on what we see in those first couple of weeks, and then you try and jump on.
Yeah, it could even be a preseason game watch just to see if these rumours are true that she's training the house down. So definitely an interesting one there. I think the second player has also been in a few of our fantasy teams over the last few years, but probably not last year.
Oh, yeah, you'd seriously hope not last year. It was Bianca Jakobsson. So it's someone that has been around the mark for defenders. So in previous seasons, she's averaged a 56 and a 59. So that's in season 7, the 56. And then in season 6, she averaged a 59. So we know that the scoring is there. The problem is she only averaged 37 last year and had a maximum score of 54. Now, that was in part because she had far fewer kick-ins. She had less than 50% of what she'd had the season prior, and that definitely affected it. And I also think to some degree Hannah Priest spending a little bit more time back there meant there was another distributor option. So those are definitely reasons why she's gone down. But I think the thing that I found really interesting from that interview was hearing about how Paige Trudgeon is going to be taking the primary lockdown role. I maybe hold out a bit more hope now that Bianca Jakobsson is someone that can get back up to that 50s average if she's not being asked to do as many lockdown roles week to week.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're seeing with a few other players like Katie Lynch, who has this potential to put up 60 averages, but then occasionally puts up an 11. And it's just when you kind of get locked down into that role where you can't really explore the freedom to have the talent and showcased like Bianca Jakobsson can.
Yeah. I also think that there are those players that play lockdown roles that can still score well because of the game styles that they play in. And I think the very low mark, clearly very direct, a team that looks to capitalise on playing on a very windy ground and often playing with the wind is not a great game style for someone in defence who maybe has to play a lockdown role but can't really ever chip it around to accumulate more to kill the clock. And that's something that St Kilda have shown themselves to be very poor at doing from a fantasy perspective. So it's going to take a little bit of a shift in game style, and it's definitely possible. We're going to talk about some other defenders today that maybe with some more experienced heads back there, they are a better side at holding onto the ball when it goes into their back 50 and finding those open, shorter targets to move up the ground.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair thing. I'm just looking at their fixture here, and it seems as if, 3 of their first 5 rounds are at RSCA, and then the other one in round 3 is at Windy Hill. So I guess the wind might be a bit of a contributing factor in those early games.
Legit. And it's more of a factor than I think we'd care to, that we really discuss from a fantasy perspective, the wind on the smaller suburban grounds and how it can completely throw a game out of whack. But yeah, for St Kilda at least, I think Bianca Jakobsson, we haven't really talked about her potential, but I think it's pretty clear. There's like 20 points of potential upside there if she returns to a role that we've seen her play before, and she's going to be priced extremely cheaply, only at 37. I think it's pretty self-evident why, if she shows that role again, she's a good pick.
I think it's also 20 points of upside in the shorter game times, right? So if we're taking that exact role, you can expand that out another 6-7 points, I would have thought comfortably.
Yeah. It's not someone that I've got on my team at the moment. I'm not shopping in that cheaper area, that super cheap area in defenders. But if I was, she'd be on my watch list for sure.
Now, another player that was mentioned by Bianca Jakobsson in this interview was Olivia Vesely as a player to watch. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
I can absolutely. So she's going to be coming into the season priced at 68, and it was definitely her best scoring season than she'd ever had before. I think her best before then had been in the high 50s, maybe 58 off the top of my head. And she also had a ceiling score of over 100. So in the season, I think she had 103 up against, who was it? It was up against Collingwood, which is a game they absolutely stormed home. And I think if you're looking for upside, she definitely has a tackling game. So she's averaged above, basically at 5 each of the last 2 years. I think it's a player that we look at and we say, look, we have to hear what the club is saying about a breakout. She's only coming into her 5th season of playing games. She's missed a bunch with injury earlier in her career. As much as it seems like it's a bit of an awkward price given the positivity that we're hearing from the club and from Bianca, I think she's on my watch list now as a potential breakout from that 60 tier, maybe up 20 points into that low 80s.
Yeah, they definitely seem a midfield that just don't get as much of the ball as other sides, but you've got to expect that eventually they're going to regress to the mean and start getting a lot more of the possession that you would expect. Because it's crazy how low it is season on season.
It is crazy, but the regression to the mean piece is really interesting because I think you can reasonably question, is it a statistical anomaly or is it a game plan that is directed by a coach or that is being crafted by a coaching staff and the players that they have on there? And I think so far in Nicky Dowell's tenure as coach at St Kilda, he's not shown himself to be a high accumulation, high fantasy scoring team. I wonder if it's just the way that he wants this squad to play that makes it a pretty dour, low mark, low disposal, kind of direct as possible type of team. And I can't answer that question. I'm just kind of positing why. I agree that regression to the mean is absolutely something I'd stand behind quite often. It's just it's a difficult question to answer when that variable may actually be the one impacting it.
Yeah, no, it's a fair concern. But at least it seems like we don't even need a regression to the mean for our next on the list. Can you tell us about who your fourth option is?
I can. She's a player coming off an ACL injury. She has forward status, but in previous seasons, she's had a decent amount of CBA time, and that is Hannah Stewart. So she missed she missed 8 games last season with an ACL injury. But according to B. Jakobsson, back super fit and definitely going to be rotating through the midfield again. She's someone that in season 7 averaged above a 60 when she was playing in a midfield role or predominant midfield role. She averaged 38 or 40 CBAs per game, which is definitely going to be a tidy total, particularly in those shorter game times. She's someone, again, loves a tackle, is not a particularly high mark player. She's definitely someone that I'm going to be looking at for my side, in particular in the forward line. That's going to be really tough to pick players. She'll probably be sitting at an F2 or probably actually an F3, given what she's priced at. But I think she's going to be an option to look for. She's got a midfield role by the sounds of it, and we hope that can become pretty solid midfield role.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be the first season where they have Ty Smith and Hannah Stewart. And when you try and combine that with Vesely and with Patrikios, it's going to be interesting to see what their midfield mix is going to be and how many minutes she's actually going to get. But at the same time, she's so underpriced compared to what she was, and there are so few options in that forward line that I'm strongly considering her already.
Yeah, 100%. I think the midfield mix is going to be tough to predict at this stage because we've also seen that that's something that's changed a lot week to week for St Kilda. So they've obviously still also got to roll Jamie Lambert through there. Nicola Zenos is someone who was getting 25, 30% CBA times at the back end of the year. Nat Exxon is someone that gets thrown in from time to time. It's not an easy prediction as to who's going to play there. And I would, it's going to be very difficult if you're trying to stand here confidently and say who's going to be, the top 4 CBA getters at St Kilda this year. But I would be surprised if Hannah Stewart isn't getting at least 30, 35% again.
Yeah, this is one that I think if we can hopefully see in the preseason matches a little bit of a tighter rotation through there than usual, which I guess for a practice match seems unlikely. But if we get that, then I'm jumping straight on.
Yeah, I think it'll be a combined effort of a really tight midfield rotation, or at least a high percentage for Stewart, and then also showing that she's back to her tackling best, which is what saw her able to score, a couple of scores above 70 in her first season in season 7.
Whilst we're on the topic of unknowns, I think that's an easy way to move on to the number 5 on our list. Who have you got here for us to round it out?
I've cheated here, and I've just gone with the rookies. There's 2 midfield rookies that St Kilda took in the draft, and both have different value propositions. So that's Charlotte Simpson and Kira Wiley. The one that really intrigues me more is Charlotte Simpson. So she's 20. So she's played a couple of seasons in the VFLW and averaged 89.3 points per game in a Geelong outfit, which is a solid VFLW team, and is going to be coming in priced as bargain basement midfielder. What I really think is going to be interesting is I don't necessarily think that she's a walk-up start in round 1, but I think given her age profile and her experience in the VFLW, she will be a very, very popular player to target if she debuts in later rounds and is able to come in and help us generate cash again as we move through the season. And she's going to be high on my watch list if she ever does, or if we ever hear that she's likely to debut.
Yeah, it's interesting because it is a competitive spot getting that midfield rookie position on field. But absolutely, if she can come in and, say round 3 or 4, maybe even round 5, because the Saints have that late double round bye, so it could be a good time to make the switch then.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of that play.
It would be good if that lines up with when Simpson makes her debut. That would be perfect if it's around that early bye. If it doesn't, though, I still think someone that, can, unsurprisingly, doesn't have many games where she has lots of marks but loves to tackle. So had in her final 6 games in the VFLW last year for Geelong in 2023, she had 1 game with more than 3 marks and had only 2 games where she had fewer than 6 tackles. So that gives you an indication of the type of player that St Kilda likes to target. It is a tackling player. It's not a high mark player. But I also think that she comes in with a pretty mature body. She's got a fairly decent set of shoulders and width to really be able to take on the more physical AFLW. So she's definitely going to be a watch for me. And then obviously Kira Wiley, she comes in highly rated, not as good as scoring in the Coates League, and even played a couple of low-scoring minutes in the VFLW for the Western Bulldogs, and will obviously be more expensive having come in as pick 10. But again, we're always looking for downgrade targets through the year. So again, another name to watch in a midfield group that we've talked about being pretty changeable.
Yeah, it does sound like if they're the sort of player that, is performing well or training really well, that they might get rewarded because clearly he doesn't have a problem swapping out those midfield options.
So. No. And by he, you mean everyone's favourite coach.
Exactly. Well, another player that's been thrown around by our favourite coach is who I want to talk about for the Jono special of the week.
Wonderful.
And that is Nick Stevens. Not Nicky, Nick Stevens, as we've now learned. Because it sounds like she's going to be playing back in defence, which is fascinating for us for a couple of reasons. Firstly is that in the game she's going to be listed as a forward, and a cheap one at that. And all the way back in season 1, she played defence for the Pies and actually ended up All-Australian. So clearly has a bit of a talent for the role, and very much has a higher fantasy output when she's back there compared to the forward places that she's been recently. So priced at about 39.1. I think we can look at something a little bit over 50 is probably a realistic uptick. And that's looking at her best seasons of the past. She's done that before, but that's in the shorter formats of the game. So something a little bit interesting. Even last year, she played the last 2 games of the season in defense, and one of them put up a 53 in a role she hadn't played for many, many years. I think playing in defense, it does a number of things, right? You kick it a lot more than you handball back there. You're probably going to take more marks. I think she's quite a good user of the ball generally. So I think with Priest, Jakobsson, and Nick Stevens back there, I think they're starting to work out a much wider range of talent, and it could open up the game style change that allows them to transition the ball a little bit differently back there. I know we've got issues with that, as we've talked about more.
I could just derail this entire episode by launching into a rant about it, but I'll let you keep going. We've gotten so far without delving into that.
We have. But look, the other thing that I really like is that defenders generally have quite high time on ground. She had her lowest last year at 84%, when she's over the 90% mark. So I think there's just a few things that you can see very easily that she steps her average up by at least 10 points. So defenders, if she was listed as a defender, I'd say this is a challenging one to pick. But as a forward, someone that we're looking at just to have some sort of level of consistency there in a line where there aren't that many options, I'm definitely tempted.
Yeah, and I fully buy all of it. I think it's a name that I will probably watch with slightly more interest now than I ever would have having heard the interview with BJ. I think the one thing I'd like to note here is that St Kilda open up with a fantastic defender matchup in round 1. They've got a matchup against the Suns. They then follow that up with 3 hard defender matchups in Sydney, Essendon and Hawthorn. And that is less than ideal. It's in fact the literal inverse with what you would want. I think that Nick Stevens is someone that I would actually like to see have a really bad score in round 1, get a little bit cheaper, then become a downgrade target as she finds her way back in a new position. But I kind of disagree with the fact that we do like to pick these kind of players who have played roles before, have moved forward, then end up back. And I think she's definitely a name on the watch list for the preseason if she shows, and St Kilda shows, they've got a more fantasy-friendly game.
No, I fully agree there. Well, look, I think that might wrap us on the St Kilda Saints. Thanks for joining along. I hope you enjoyed. If you're looking for us on any of our socials, you could find us on Twitter and Instagram at FreeKickWPod. And otherwise, tomorrow we're going to jump over to the Richmond Tigers.
We are.
Any interest there?
Well, I do have a lot of interest there. There's some fascinating questions, but Mel will be very annoyed if we don't also spruik the fact that you can now listen to Free Kick on YouTube as well.
Oh, this is true. Yeah, very big opening there.
It's nothing special. You're not going to get video from us. Unfortunately, we're not technologically there yet. But if you do prefer to listen to podcasts, all of the audio will be uploaded on YouTube. And it, again, is just Free Kick W Pod to make it all easy for everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Give us a subscription there, I guess. I don't know what it would be.
You do have to like and subscribe. And at the moment, we've got some cracking views. I think most of our videos have maybe 2.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you don't tell anyone about anything.
Well, yes, and we've only just launched it, and we've never really discussed the possibility of it before. But yes, go to YouTube if you'd like. It'll be there.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up. So have a good rest of your day, and we'll catch you tomorrow.
See ya.